All right, let me tell you what really happened that night in Philly and why it changed everything for me, and for a billionaire who thought money could keep him safe. Who the hell is she? That's what one of the guys yelled when I dropped his buddy like a sack of flour right there on the marble floor. People were screaming, forks clattering, a wine bottle spinning, and I'm standing in a maid's uniform, with my heart jackhammering, my mind dead calm. You ever surprise yourself so completely that your own body feels like it belonged to someone braver? For just a second, if it were you, what would you have done? I'd been invisible at Barclay Prime for almost a year. Fancy spot marble like a mirror chandeliers that make you think stars got tired and came inside to rest. People in there wore quiet like armor, talked softly when they lied, laughed loud when they were losing. You know what I mean? I kept my head down, poured the wine right, moved along the rails. I listened without listening, saw without staring, tucked it all away. That's the trick when you need a job and don't need trouble. That night, the room glowed gold, like all that money could melt and run right off the tables. Andrew Baker sat alone in the corner booth, a man who'd built a mountain out of code and contracts, and then climbed on top of it so no one could push him. Charcoal suit, a watch that flashed like a secret every time the cuff moved. 2 wine glasses. 1 chair pulled out that was never going to get warm. He looked steady, bored, and a little hollow, like the quiet cost more than the food. I passed him with a bottle balanced on my palm, didn't look twice, didn't give him the recognition. He probably smelled on most people before they spoke. That's not my style. When you've worked for cash, slept short, and learned to walk away fast, you stop making small talk with the rich. You stop making anything with them. You keep your pace, you count your steps, you breathe slow. The way my dad taught me, not for pouring wine, but for surviving. He used to say, don't let them see you first. Surprise is the only weapon they can't practice against. He was ex-military, big on rules, bigger on plans, the kind of man who could fix a leaky pipe and a shaky mind in the same afternoon. And then they walked in. 5 men who didn't match the room. Not just the suits, the eyes. Predators don't admire chandeliers. They map exits. They cut corners with their shoulders. The floor got smaller as they moved. One stood at the end of Andrew's booth like a door that wouldn't open. The rest spread around him and dropped their voices low, the way trouble always does. You think you can hide behind money forever, Mr. Baker? One said, hand flat on the white linen. Andrew looked up like he'd expected them, which was almost funny because nobody expects what came next. I eased closer with the bottle, checking a crease on a tablecloth like it mattered. The manager was at the host stand. Security was talking to the bartender about the game. Everyone had an excuse that sounded like a job. I had a job too, and a second one layered underneath it, the one where you keep people safe without telling them you're doing it. Andrew said he didn't owe them anything in that voice people use when they're used to winning. The man leaned in and blocked the candlelight like he owned the flame. That's when my breath shifted, slow and slower out. My fingers loosened. It's a switch, not a feeling. The room narrows, the sounds separate, your brain draws a little map in the air. You them edges, angles, the bottle, the glass, the floor. You either have that switch or you don't. Then the sound came. The trigger wasn't a shout. It was a slap, hand to table, and a shock of wine shot across the cloth like a wound. That's how fast a nice night snaps. One man went for Andrew's collar, another pressed in from the left. The one at the booth held position. People gasped, a fork pinged off the floor. The woman in the front clutched a string of pearls like they were a life vest. Security froze like a bad connection. I let the bottle slide from my palm, caught the neck at the last second, to place it softly, and stepped into the geometry I knew like my own face. No warning. That only helps the other guy. I pivoted behind. The first attacker slipped my forearm under his chin, walked my hand to my bicep and squeezed. Think of it like putting someone to sleep without tucking them in. He went limp in 2 seconds, down in 3. I flowed with him so his head didn't crack the tile. People like to say it's all adrenaline. It's not. It's math in motion. The second man turned eyes big before his fist was. I was already low swept, the back of his knee, stuck my foot behind his ankle, and took his legs out like a chair that had lost a screw. As he dropped, I drove my elbow into his sternum clean and quick, not enough to break bone, just enough to break his plan. 2 down. And yeah, somebody yelled it, "Who the hell is she?" Like that was the important question in the room. If it were you, would you be wondering that? Or wondering how fast you could crawl under a table? The third swung a champagne bottle, a bad choice if you know what glass can do. I caught his wrist mid-arc, rotated until I felt his joints argue with each other, and used his own forward weight to slingshot him into a linen-covered table. That crash, silver porcelain breath, it's the sound of a room waking up too late. The fourth hesitated, which saved us both some bruising. He took a run for the kitchen instead. The fifth played slick hand, dipping into his coat. Not a gun, not that night, but close enough to make my skin buzz. I snatched the big pepper grinder off the bar, you know the kind they act like a magic wand over salads, and met him with a blunt reminder that wood hurts. He folded like a newspaper. Then it was quiet. That special quiet where your ears ring with a memory of sound. Phones were out. Security suddenly remembered their job descriptions. Andrew was standing there with his tie undone and his eyes wide open for maybe the first time that year. I asked if he was okay. He just said, like the word didn't know where to land. I told him there were 2 left. One breathing heavy in the kitchen alley, one on his way to a nap under a table. Sirens started like a line drawn from the night toward us. I left. You can call it running, but that wasn't the reason. I have a rule that belongs to my father. Do the work disappear before the politics catch up. The alley behind the restaurant smelled like wet cardboard and cigarette smoke. I pulled my apron over my head and walked toward the street like I had somewhere important to be, because you get fewer questions that way. Sophie, wait. I heard the shoes before I heard the voice. He caught up. Andrew, not the billionaire from the magazine, shoots the man who just saw a stranger rearrange his evening with her hands. I didn't turn until I had to. He said he didn't get to say thank you. I said he didn't need to. He said he wanted to. I asked him why. He blinked like he hadn't expected the question. Because you saved my life. I'll be honest, I couldn't resist pressing the bruise a little. You think I did that for you? That shut him up. I walked. He let me. That was his first smart decision of the night. 3 days can feel like a year if you're dodging attention. I dumped the apron, changed my number, deleted the socials, took a dishwashing gig at a Caribbean joint that pays in cash and doesn't ask for last names. Flickering lights, greasy tile, good music on a static speaker, steam that feels like it could scrub off the whole day. I told myself I liked the noise because memory can't talk over it. Did it work? For a minute. Yeah, that happened. But the city isn't a big place when people want to find you. The fight went viral. Grainy angles, my face blurred by motion, everyone with a comment, everyone an expert. Some called me a hero. Some called me a hired gun. That's how you know none of them were there. A man in a plain suit stepped into the kitchen asking for me by name. My coworker looked at me like he'd just seen thunder. I shook my head, told him to say I was the wrong girl. The man found me anyway, placed a card I didn't touch on the steel counter. "Mr. Baker would like to see you. He says you saved his life." I didn't go right away. I don't owe rich men my time. But curiosity is also a muscle. It twitches when you try to hold it still. A few hours later, I found myself staring up at the Rittenhouse Hotel, all glass and gold and echoes. I told myself I was only going to tell him to leave me alone. That's how honest I was being with myself. He met me by the elevators, looked like he hadn't slept, didn't pretend otherwise. In his suite, he poured water, not wine. That mattered. He didn't ask me to explain the fight. He asked who I am. That mattered more. I told him the truth I tell in pieces. My dad taught self-defense in West Philly, showed me how to get out of holds and into rooms I thought were locked. He got sick. We sank with the bills. Dreams fall quietly. Jobs come and go. You tighten up, you stop looking past Friday. You practice at night on the roof just to remember you still know how to move. He told me his version. Slept in a storage unit, built something from nothing. Forgot what it felt like to need anyone. We sat in that space where two stories rest near each other, not touching yet, but close enough to feel the warmth. Then he said he owned a private security firm, small and quiet but real work, and he thought I could do more than half his people. Not work for me, he said. Work with me. I nodded like I was hearing a melody I recognized. I won't lie. Part of me felt seen, and after a year of being invisible on purpose that can feel like standing in the sun too long. Twist coming. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. The next day, he invited me back, said he wanted to show me what the firm does. He slid a leather folder across the counter. Neat, heavy, expensive. My name was on the tab like it had always belonged there. I opened it and felt my stomach tighten. Not a job description. A dossier. My dossier. Admissions letters. I never used training certifications. I'd almost forgotten a clipping from a workshop I'd run with my dad, even a photo of us with our arms crossed like boxers. It was like my life had been scooped up and polished without my permission. You had this printed before I said anything, didn't you? He hesitated. He said, "This is how we vet," as if the process was a blanket that could warm a cold mistake. I said, "No, you decided before you asked, and that's a different thing." Consent isn't a signature. It's the moment you look someone in the eye and let them have a say. You think that's fair? I asked you, the folks listening now, to build a seat and then tell me it's mine before I even choose to sit. I grabbed my bag. He didn't stop me. Good. A person can be powerful and wrong at the same time. I took that folder to a laundromat on 23rd, and Reed sat with dryers breathing hot air and the hum that sounds like a lullaby if you're tired enough. The file felt like a gift with a lock on it. Everything I wanted was in there. Stability, respect, something earned, except the part where I choose. I stared through the glass drum while my shirts tumbled and thought about my dad's rule. Never let them see you first. I'd broken it not by fighting, but by believing attention could be safe. Meanwhile, I found out later Andrew canceled his meetings and sat in some quiet lounge listening to a record spin. He wrote an apology, deleted it, tried again, deleted it. Finally, he sent me a text. "I'll be here until midnight if you want to talk. No pressure, just peace." You'd think that's nothing a line. But for someone like him, no pressure is a door he's not used to leaving open. I stared at the screen for 3 minutes. I got my coat. The Rittenhouse Lounge is one of those rooms where the furniture floats on thick air. I walked in at 10:41. He didn't look up right away, like he didn't want to scare the moment off. I sat. I told him straight. I didn't come for a second offer. He said, "You're not getting one." That made me pause. We talked. He said sorry without a paragraph. I said sorry for pushing away before I checked. We put the folder between us like a shared problem. I told him I have questions, conditions, no guarantees. He said good. Not polite good, real good, like he'd figured out something he should have known years ago. That offering help isn't a transaction, it's an invitation. 2 weeks later, I walked back into Barclay Prime. Not in a uniform, not carrying wine. Black blazer hair pulled clean, a clipboard that wasn't there for show. I was auditing their security quietly, efficiently, the way you do when the point is safety, not spectacle. Most people assumed I was a manager with a frown. Fine by me. Andrew slid into the old booth with a small smile. "Looks like you own the place," he said. "Please," I told him, "you still pay the bills." "But you command the room," he said, "and that's worth more than a receipt." A guy at a table started raising his voice over a bottle he claimed wasn't what he ordered. Staff began to stutter the way people do when they sense a scene forming. I walked over calm. "Sir, let's fix that right now." He deflated before he even knew why. Authority doesn't always need volume. Sometimes it just needs someone who knows where the edges are. Outside that night, the city shone off wet pavement rain, having done its simple mercy. Andrew asked if I regretted stepping in that first night. "No," I said, "because for the first time in years, I felt like myself." The strange part was realizing that being invisible had been my armor, and stepping forward, in front of a room and a camera and a billionaire, was the only way to lay it down. Now here's the part that's going to split the comments, and I want it to because I've got questions for you too. We live in a world that loves to film a fight and skip the aftermath, that wants a hero without the uncomfortable part, where heroes are people with boundaries and histories and needs that don't fit in a headline. We say we value consent, but we still reward the folks who move fastest and apologize later. We talk about safety like it's a product the rich can buy, and the rest of us have to improvise. Do you think that's fair? Andrew didn't save me, and I didn't save him. We interrupted each other's worst habits. That's the truth. He offered me a seat, not a leash, and for once I didn't walk away just because I was scared of being owned. I set my terms. He listened. Respect isn't softer than power. It's sharper. It cuts cleaner. You can build a firm on that, a team on that, a life on that. You can also lose it in a second if you forget to ask first. Here's the twist most people miss. The biggest fight wasn't with those 5 men. It was with the part of me that had learned to live small to stay safe, and the part of him that thought control was kindness. Those 2 parts met in a hallway that smelled like money and broken glass, and decided to try something complicated. Trust with conditions. It's not romantic. It's not cinematic. But it feels real. You know what I mean. I'll leave you with this. If you were me standing in that gold-washed room with your past catching up, and your future staring at you in a leather folder, do you take the job on your terms, or do you walk again and keep the quiet that never judged you? If it were you, what would you have done? And if you were him, would you learn to offer without deciding? Or would your old instincts win because they've paid the bills so far? Don't answer easy. Sit with it for a second. I'm still me. I still take the long way home. I still train on the roof when the city is too loud to listen. I keep a pepper grinder joke in my back pocket for when a room needs to exhale. And yeah, sometimes I go back to the laundromat, sit with the spin watch, clean fabric slap softly against the glass, and remind myself that simple can be holy. But I also walk into rooms now where my name is on the log, where my voice levels the table before anyone flips it, where I'm not just reacting, I'm designing safety for people who don't know how to ask for it. That's not the American dream. It's my father's dream, repurposed. Not glory, just readiness and the choice to stand up without asking permission from the wrong people. If you've ever felt invisible until the moment you were the only one who could move, if you've ever been underestimated so hard, it almost felt like a gift, talk to me. If you think power without consent is still power, argue with me. If you've had to say no to a golden offer because the door didn't have a handle on your side, tell that story. I don't want to win a comment war. I want to hear where your lines are because that's how we find the ones we should draw together. Stick around because of what happens next. Well, that's on you and me. You want more of this. Real fights, quiet choices, rules that keep people whole. Hit subscribe, share this with the one friend who always steps in, and drop your take below. Tell me if I was right to walk, right to return, wrong to trust, wrong to test. I read them, I learn. And if nothing else, remember this. You're not invisible, not really. Sometimes the world just doesn't know where to look until you show them. Your move.